Hello and a very warm welcome, viewers. You're watching India's World with your host, Kriti Mishra. India and Mauritius have signed comprehensive economic cooperation and partnership agreement. This is the first trade agreement signed by India with a country in Africa. And to discuss the way forward, I'm joined by Mr. Anil Trigunath, former ambassador, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, foreign affairs expert, and Mr. K.V. Prasad, senior journalist. Welcome to Atsaba Television, all of you. Dr. Sreeram, this is the first trade agreement signed by India with a country in Africa, as we know. It was also the first time since 2011 that India signed a free trade pact with any country. How will this move benefit India?
Well, Kriti, I think we have to broaden the horizon about India-Mauritius. Of course, there is a bilateral trade agreement, but the strategic importance, the geostrategic importance, also needs to be factored in. So volumes, bilateral trade volumes on both sides are expected to grow. Their fisheries and sugar, as ambassadors mentioned, those kind of garments will get market access to India. But Mauritius is hardly 1.2 million people. It's a very small island nation. So in itself, it's not a big buyer. It cannot be a big buyer of Indian exports. It can be a gateway to the continental Africa, and that's of course a far bigger market and an increasing destination for our export. I think almost our India-Africa trade is almost $80 billion now. So it's huge. But I think we have to look at what it means from a broader sense. We have also, when Dr. Jaishankar was in Mauritius, they have offered $100 million line of credit for defense. For maritime surveillance, we are giving them aircraft and helicopters and such things. We are, beefing up their coast guard. These countries, Mauritius, Maldives, are all part of a broader strategy for us. Broader Indian Ocean strategy, where we want to remain a preeminent power, where our influence must be sustained, where, as Ambassador was mentioning, the Chinese have been making a lot of inroads and giving inducements under Belt and Road and other initiatives, and trying to, penetrate Africa via the Indian Ocean. So I think their submarines, the presence of a lot of their, naval equipment is a danger, and we would not want to let go. And secondly, the diaspora is important. Mauritius, 70% are people of Indian origin. Pravin Jagannath himself is of Indian origin, and in fact, Pravin Jagannath was undergoing some kind of a domestic crisis, political crisis. There was an oil spill from a Japanese ship last year, and he was under pressure. So I think Dr. Jaishankar's visit at this time and signing of the agreement has broader, we are trying to shore up a very reliable partner of India. And if you look at the location, it's in the heart of the Indian Ocean. Right next to it is Réunion, which is the French island. And we have now an agreement with France for using naval facilities on Réunion. And further, a little bit north of Mauritius is the Diego Garcia Island, which is claimed by Mauritius. India has supported Mauritius' claim. And that's where, there's a US naval facility. So if you take all these together, and then there's Maldives a little further up, that the southern half of the Indian Ocean, where we need, land bases from which to be able to operate, both to counter, piracy, but also to maintain what we call the rule of law in Indo-Pacific. That was the main agreement in Mauritius. When we say rule of law, what do we mean by it? We don't want hegemony. We don't want, external powers. China is not an Indian Ocean power, but it is like muscling its way in, and it is often asking these countries to give up India and to go for their projects and their infrastructure assistance and so on. So they're trying to dislodge us. So I think this is part of a broader strategy of Modi government, and the free trade agreement is a central part, but so is the defense, and so is the cultural connect. In fact, Dr. Jaishankar's speech in Mauritius was to the Indian diaspora was so moving. He spoke about our Hindu festivals and the people from Bihar and Tamil Nadu and how they went and settled in Mauritius from the 19th century under British colonial rule, how we want to connect them back to the Mother India. All these things, they matter a lot, because in this region, the Chinese don't have that. So India is playing to its strengths. And I think our strategy is very clear. We want to be the net provider of security and prosperity. And that's why the blue economy matters. The PM's agenda has been to connect our ports like Vishakhapatnam or Cochin, to these countries, all the way up to the western end of the Indian Ocean. We are also building Chabahar port little
Yes.
further north on the Arabian Sea. So all these things, if you connect, I think we've got a good strategy going. And we are being very proactive. We are not letting things fall. For example, Mauritius, if Pravin Jagannath's government falls, again, there could be a crisis, and the Chinese could try and pounce like what they did in Nepal and Maldives and Sri Lanka in the past. So it's very important, I think, the timing of this agreement, and we are showing that we are politically very, very aware of the opportunities, and we are making sure that we grab them.
All right, Dr. Sreeram, you made very important points there, and I'd like to get deeper insights on the defense cooperation part of it. All right, Dr. Sreeram, as you were telling us about, and you already flagged this concern, that we saw the trade agreement between China and Mauritius making the first FTA between China and a country in Africa. How will New Delhi counter the influence of Beijing, which has made huge investments in Mauritius and other African nations?
Well, if you take the broader Indian Ocean perspective, then Sri Lanka, Maldives, Seychelles, Madagascar, and then the east coast of Africa, Mozambique, Kenya, Tanzania, all these countries have got, massive Chinese inroads now in the name of Belt and Road. So I don't think we are going to counter them with the, offering alternative checkbooks, the way the Chinese throw the money. And I think, but the one big difference is, our assistance is not based on very onerous terms. Our lines of credits are not like Chinese loans. And we don't, grab territory. What the Chinese are doing is, first they ensnare these small island nations with, offers of infrastructure aid. And then obviously those countries overborrow. And then they cannot repay, and then the Chinese say, okay, you hand over a strategic port or a strip of land, where we can build something and run it for 99 years or 100 years. So this is what has been happening across Indian Ocean region. So now these countries are more aware, you see, and that's why countries like Mauritius, Maldives have realized they have already gone through that phase of Chinese pressure, and there is a pushback in their own countries and the societies. That's why India is now being welcomed, because we are not demanding, and we don't impose conditionality like the way the Chinese do. And I think second thing is, the Chinese, if you look at the Chinese FTA with Mauritius, they have a huge surplus with almost the whole of Africa.
Yes.
They buy some minerals, but they're now increasingly exporting their finished products to the growing African middle class. And they're going to flood their markets and try to capture them. So I don't think India has either the capacity or the intent to do that. So because our exports are more service oriented, so we are not going to be like 800-pound gorilla that's going to eat up Africa, the way China has emerged in the last decade or so. So we are lighter, and therefore, and I think the fact that we are also democratic matters. These countries, for example, like Mauritius or Maldives, India has been a big supporter of the democratization of these countries. We often don't mention it. The fact is, whenever there's authoritarian tendencies, and even on the eastern side of Indian Ocean, you go to countries like Fiji, which are similar to Mauritius with the Indian population. See, whenever there are threats to democracy or to rule of law or to moderate form of society, India has come to the rescue, and India continues to. For example, in Maldives, we have been, our moderate Islamic ulama from India have been going and helping to de-radicalize a lot of the youth in the Maldives who unfortunately have turned to the ISIS ideology and have gone to Syria and Iraq to fight.
Yes.
So there are many things that India brings which China cannot, and which no other country can fill that vacuum. But what we needed to do was to realize that, and that to realize that we have major strengths and to play to those strengths. I think Narendra Modi government, they have been more proactive on this, much more than before, because they realize that if we let go this window of next 5, 10, 15 years, then like the Chinese say, it will become a giant Chinese lake. And then, Pakistan will come in, especially where there is a Muslim populations. The Pakistan will play that card and try to promote jihadist tendencies like they were doing in Maldives until the change in the government, until the democratization. So
all right.
I think
yes, sir.
The one more thing I wanted to add was the tourism. You see, this is where
Yes.
India has suddenly become a game changer. Last 1 year, since the corona started, we used to be number 5 in the senders of tourists to countries like Maldives
Yes.
and Mauritius. Now, with the travel bubble with Maldives, we have become number one in just 12 months. We have displaced the Chinese, displaced the Russians, displaced Europeans, everybody. And we have generated livelihoods for tens of thousands of people in the Maldives. And Ibrahim Soli, was the president of Maldives, was thanking our prime minister for that we became a lifeline for them when nobody else was willing to take the risk due to the pandemic. So through tourism also can be used as a part of our strategy. Earlier, it was just, free
Right.
will. Citizens
Right.
with money.
But you made a very important point about services. Yes, sir. You made a very important point about services. All right, I have last 60 seconds on the show. Closing comments, Dr. Sreeram.
I think Indian Ocean is a region increasingly where the global balance of power is going to be decided. India's rise is also going to be decided. Of course, the border conflicts we have at LOC and LAC have been preoccupying us lately. But from a growth perspective, the oceans is where it's not controlled by a single country, and there are the high seas, which is international terrain. And that's where, we have the scope to project power, to expand, and to also support these countries. I think India's vision under Prime Minister Modi has been that we will take along Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Vishwas is not only a domestic, it is
Yes.
especially for island nations who are suffering from, severe threat of climate change and other environmental devastation. They need economic support. They need social support. They need to be stabilized politically. We are also supporting that in a big way, their domestic
Yes.
politics. And of course, our broader geostrategy is to rise as an Indo-Pacific power. And for that, Mauritius, Maldives, Seychelles, these countries are going to be very central. And we are right now focusing and giving it 100%. So that's good news for the country.
All right, on that note, thank you so much for joining us.